Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Ansar Academy. Today is the day when we will be starting our past paper session, October-November 2020, paper 41, 0620, Chemistry IGCSE, paper 4 extended. So, पहला question है कि name the element that can be used as a fuel. Well, hydrogen can be used as a fuel in a hydrogen fuel cell. So, we will be using hydrogen. Second, name the element that forms an oxide with a similar structure to diamond. Well, it's a silicon oxide. That the element is silicon, which forms the similar structure with the diamond. Part 3 says that the name the element that forms an amphoteric oxide. So overall, we have to learn that there are two amphoteric oxides, aluminum oxide and zinc oxide. So here aluminum is present, so we will be naming aluminum. Okay, part 4 says that they name the element that has oxidation states of +2 and +3. Well, it's a iron. Name the element extracted from bauxite. Well, aluminum ore is called bauxite, so element that comes from bauxite is aluminum. And an element that has atoms with electronic structure 2,6. Okay, we have to look at the periodic table, and by looking at the oxygen has the similar electronic structure. Explain how sacrificial protection prevents rusting. Okay, they are linking this question to iron rust when it is in contact with oxygen and water. So in part 1, explain how sacrificial protection prevents rusting. Well, the answer says that we have to say that zinc, because it is the metal which is used in sacrificial protection, zinc is more reactive than iron, and so we can simply say that it corrodes or oxidizes instead of iron. Okay, state one other method of rust prevention. Well, we can use paints, we can apply oiling. Question 2, part A. State the name of this zinc ore. Well, it's zinc blendy, which consists zinc sulfide from which zinc is extracted. Okay, write a chemical equation for the reaction of zinc oxide with carbon. Zinc oxide with carbon gives carbon dioxide, as carbon takes oxygen and zinc is left alone. So we have to balance it now, as it's for balancing also. Okay, now it's balanced. Okay, state what type of chemical change happens to the zinc in zinc oxide in this reaction. Okay, what happens with the zinc in zinc oxide in this reaction? Well, the chemical change which happens is called reduction, because oxygen is being lost. So our explanation would be oxygen is lost. Explain why aluminum is not extracted from aluminum oxide by heating with carbon. Well, aluminum is more reactive than carbon. That's why it cannot be reduced by the carbon. So there is an alternative method for the extraction of zinc from zinc oxide. Well, electrolysis is the best method. As we can get zinc from zinc oxide by doing electrolysis. Okay, part C is brass is an alloy of zinc. Explain in terms of particles why brass is harder than pure zinc. Okay, brass is an alloy, yes. Well, our first point would be that the particles exist as layers, as we know that the brass contains different size of as brass is an alloy, so alloy contains different size of atoms. So that's why it gives the alloy the more stronger and the harder properties, and thus it is difficult to slip and slide over each other. Okay, we have to balance this equation now. So for balancing, what is your answer? A 2.8 gram of sample of impure ammonium sulfate is found to contain 0.7 gram of impurities. Calculate the percentage of the ammonium sulfate in the sample. Okay, so it's simply 0.7 divided by 2.8 multiplied by 100. So this so it will be 25%. So 25% is the impurities. So the remaining would be the percentage of the ammonium sulfate. It would be 75. Describe a test for ammonia gas. Well, as ammonia is an alkali gas, so it would turn red. Damp red litmus paper turns blue. Okay, name the process that occurs when ammonia gas spreads throughout the laboratory. So, as it is a gas, so diffusion will occur. So why we have to use the word diffusion? So we have to explain using the idea about particles. So first point would be particles moves randomly. As we know that these are the gas particles. So gas particles moves randomly. And second point would be that diffusion occurs from high concentration to low concentration. So it would be our second point of explanation. Second question states that explain why carbon dioxide gas CO2 will spread throughout the laboratory at a slower rate than ammonia gas. Well, it's lighter gas. The ammonia is a lighter gas because the ammonia gas diffuses faster than the carbon dioxide. So we can alternatively say that CO2 is heavier, or CO2 molecules, as CO2 is CO2 molecules are heavier than NH3. Well, the word molecules, why we are using, because CO2 has a covalent bonds, and covalent bonds only refers to the molecules, so that's why we are using the word molecule. Okay, this question is from the about the Haber process, in which ammonia is produced by the reaction between nitrogen and hydrogen. As there are few conditions, this is written: in the Haber process, a temperature of 450 centigrade and a pressure of 200 atmosphere are used in the presence of finely divided iron. A large equilibrium yield of ammonia would be produced if a lower temperature and a higher pressure are used. Okay, we are using 450 and a pressure of 200, but they are saying we will be getting larger equilibrium yield if we will be using a lower temperature and a higher pressure. Okay, explain why a lower temperature and a higher pressure are not used. Okay, as we know, the lower temperature cause the reaction to slow down, so we will simply write rate of reaction will be slower. And as far as the higher pressure is concerned, the cost is ineffective, because of when we will provide the higher pressure, the machines and all the load will be costing a lot, so it will be expensive. So we can write is expensive, or it needs more electricity. So as it needs more electricity, it's expensive. State the role of the iron in the Haber process. Well, it acts as a catalyst. The iron is from the group called the transition elements, and transition elements plays a role as a catalyst. Ammonia is a weak base. Explain the meaning of the term base. Well, term base means a proton acceptor. Okay, part 2 states that suggests the pH of aqueous ammonia. Well, if we know that ammonia is alkali, so the pH of aqueous ammonia would be around 12. So we can write 7 to 12, or up to 12, as it's a weak base. Okay, question number 4, part A. State the percentage of clean dry air, which is oxygen. So oxygen is 21% in the clean dry air. Name the process used to separate oxygen and nitrogen from liquid air. Well, it's fractional distillation. You would be wondering that it consists of 2 marks. So 1 mark would be fractional, and second mark would be of distillation. State the property of oxygen and nitrogen that allows these gases to be separated using this process. Well, we are using this fractional distillation process, and it separates the oxygen and nitrogen on the basis of their different boiling points. So we will write different boiling points would be the factor or the property of oxygen and nitrogen. Okay, now we have to complete the shell of CO2, carbon dioxide. We know that the oxygen molecule and oxygen and carbon atom shares 4 electrons, or they share 2 pair of electrons. So we can write as, we will draw the 2 pairs and complete the remaining ones. Remember, the remaining ones would be 4, as we have to complete the 8 electrons of a shell. It will be similar in this and the carbon will be having 8 electrons, because 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, so it has already 8 electrons, so no need to draw more. So the part D is of graph question, and it shows the concentration of carbon dioxide, which is increasing year by year. So question states that the data shown in the graph is of global concern. Well, yes, because the concentration of carbon dioxide is increasing globally. Explain why. So we have to state how many reasons? 3 reasons, as it is of 3 marks. We will begin by writing CO2 is a greenhouse gas, because it's a greenhouse gas. That's why it is a kind of disadvantage of or a global concern. And we will write increase in CO2 concentration increases global warming. And because of that, because of what? Because of global warming, the rapid change of climate globally occurs. You can also write that the melting of glaciers will also happen, will also happen, and which will increase the level of sea level, which will increase the sea level. And okay, part E states, name the process in the carbon cycle by which plants remove carbon dioxide. Well, it's a photosynthesis, in through which the carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere by the plants, and they use to make their glucose. Okay, state what is meant by the term electrolysis. The breakdown of ionic aqueous compound, you have to state the aqueous because it contains a mark. Ionic aqueous compound or molten compound by the provision of electricity. Explain why inert electrodes are used. Well, the only reason is that they are unreactive in the reaction. Okay, name the products from at each electrode. Okay, it's about the dilute sulfuric acid, which is H2SO4. So it contains H plus ion and SO4 negative 2 ions. And as it is acid, so it also contains the water ions, which is H plus and OH negative ions. So at the negative electrode, the hydrogen will go, because it's the only product, it's the only positive product. And at positive electrode, instead of sulfate ion, OH ion will go. Why? Because it is less stable. So when OH ion will go, the oxygen will be formed, and at negative electrode the hydrogen will be formed. So we don't have to write H plus ion or O negative 2 ion, because they are asking about the products. So the product would be hydrogen and oxygen. Write an ionic half equation for the reaction at the negative electrode. At the negative electrode, as the hydrogen is producing, hydrogen is being produced, so it will be H plus gaining electron. But we are concerned that hydrogen molecule, like there will be 2 hydrogen atoms, so for 2 hydrogen atoms there will be 2 electrons and 2 H plus ion. Okay, it's about the process called the contact process, in which sulfuric acid is produced. Okay, stage 1 involves the combustion of sulfur to form sulfur dioxide. Write the chemical equation for the stage 1. It's simply S plus O2 into SO2. Explain what is meant by the term equilibrium. So it means the rate of backward and forward reaction are equal, and the second mark would be of constant concentration of reactants and products. Okay, explain what the diagram shows about the energy changes in the forward reaction. Well, as the product has low energy than the reactant, so it is the exothermic reaction. You will write products have low energy, and forward reaction is exothermic. Okay, state what oleum reacts with in stage 4. Well, it reacts with water to produce sulfuric acid. Okay, a sample of sulfuric acid H2SO4 has a concentration of 0.75 mole per dm cube. Calculate the concentration of sulfuric acid in gram per dm cube. Okay, so it's simply 0.75 multiplied by the mr of H2SO4. It would be 98. Yes, 98. So our answer would be 73.5. As it is gram per dm cubes, that's why we are multiplying with the mr of H2SO4. Okay, next question states that, okay, next question is about ethane, propane and butane are members of the same homologous series. While name this homologous series. Well, the ethane, propane and butane are simply alkanes. State two ways members of the same homologous series are similar. So first would be same chemical properties and same functional group, or you can also write same general formula. Okay, 1 mole of ethane C2H6 contains 6.02 multiplied by 10 to the power 23 molecules. Calculate how many molecules are in 15 gram of ethane. Well, so we have to find first the mr of C2H6 because 1 mole of ethane. So 1 mole mean 1 mole will be related to mr. So mr would be 30. So it means that 30 gram would be 6.02 multiplied by 10 to the power 23 molecules. So how many would be 15? So it's simply a half. So half would be 3.01 multiplied by 10 to the power 23. Okay, next question. Propane reacts with chlorine. Write the formula of the product which does not contain carbon. Okay, it is simply HCl. Why? Because propane reacts with chlorine, it means it's in substitution reaction. So one by one, hydrogen molecule will be given out and chlorine will be substituted instead of hydrogen, and hydrogen will be bonded with chlorine and forming HCl. Okay, draw the structure of organic product formed. Show all of the atoms and all of the bonds. Well, so as we know that there will be ClH. We will complete the remaining bonds of carbon as it will be bonding. As it will be having 4 bonds. So carbon will be having 4 bonds. So at one time, the individual Cl will be bonded with carbon. Yes. Okay, state the name of this type of reaction. Well, it's a substitution reaction. Okay, aqueous bromine was added. Okay, it's a similar test for the bromine, for the ethene, sorry, for the alkenes. So we will add the aqueous bromine and it will turn from orange to colorless if ethene or simply alkene will be present. Explain in terms of bonding why there is no color change when aqueous bromine is added to ethane. Okay, so answer would be no C double bond C present, carbon carbon present, as there would be no carbon carbon double bond, so there won't be any color change, because color change happens because of the carbon 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 double bond. Okay, we have to draw the structure of these isomers, as they are saying that there are 2 structural isomers with the formula C4H10. So we will simply write the first C4H10. We will draw. After drawing carbon, we will complete the remaining bonds of carbon, as the carbon has 4 bonds. So we will simply complete all those bonds. So it's simply C4H10. So other isomer would be simply draw another branch or methyl branch. So it would simply an isomer. So yes, draw 3 carbon this time and 1 carbon in the branch, and then complete the remaining bonds as you have already did before. So there is a cracking reaction happening, as cracking reaction happens when the larger chains is broken down into smaller ones. So C6H14 is broken down C4H10, and we will write the remaining ones as there are 2 carbons remaining and 4 hydrogens. Okay, in this we have to find the empirical formula of this compound. First step we will be finding the mole ratio, which is mole is equal to mass over mr. So the percentage given by mass, so we are considering these percentages as the masses. So 85.7 mole is equal to mass over mR. Carbon would be 12, hydrogen would be 14.3 divided by 1. So our answer would be moles. Okay, it is 7.14. So we will divide by the smallest. So 7.14 will be divided by 7.14, and 14.3 would be dividing by 7.14. So if you will divide 14.3 by 7.14, the answer would be 2.0028. So simply we will be counting as 2. So our ratio would be 1 ratio and 2. So CH2 will be the empirical formula. So in the next question we have to find the molecular mass. So empirical mass would be 12 plus 2, it would be 14. So 112 divided by 14 would be 8. So it simply means we will multiply the carbon with the empirical formula with 8. So as empirical formula is CH2, you will multiply with 8, so it will become C8H 2, 8, 16. So C8H16 would be the molecular formula. Okay, question number 7, part 1 states that it's about the fermentation and the reaction with ethene with the steam that produces the ethanol by these two methods. Given advantage of using fermentation compared with method 2. Okay, we know the fermentation is having a bigger advantage, which is a renewable resource, as we are using the renewable resource which is called the glucose renewable resource. And the disadvantage of using fermentation is we are getting not pure ethanol, so we can write impure ethanol produced, or it is a slow process. Say the name of the product that turns litmus red. Okay, they are talking about the ethanol reacts with acidified potassium magnate to form water, and a product that turns litmus red. Okay, it's simply the ethanoic acid. Why? Because ethanol is reacting, so the acid will be formed, which is ethanoic acid. The acid would be converting litmus into red color. So okay, it's the type of reaction that ethanol undergoes when it reacts with acidified potassium magnate. Remember, the potassium magnate is an oxidant, so it simply the oxidation will happen. Okay, name the ester form in this reaction when ethanol reacts with methanoic acid. So it would be simply ethyl, because ethanol will be ethyl, and methanoic acid would be turning into methanoate. Remember these kind of names, YL and ATE. ATE would be with the acid, and YL would be with alcohols. Okay, draw the structure of ester formed. Okay, it will be simpler. We will draw first the methanoate. Meth mean one carbon atom, so we will complete the remaining bonds, and the ethyl branch. Eth mean two carbon atoms, so we will draw two carbon atoms, and the remaining bond will be completing. So it's simply the ester. Okay, question states the difference in melting point is due to differences in attractive force between particles. Well, yes. Name the type of attractive force in each substance which is responsible for the difference in melting points. Okay, ethanol. Why ethanol is having a lower melting point? Because of the attractive force. So we have to name the type of attractive force. As we know, ethanol consists of the covalent bonds. We will be saying that force of attraction due to, or you can say between molecules. Before molecules वहाँ पे ही होते हैं जहाँ पे कोवेलेंट बॉन्ड होता है. आयोनिक बॉन्ड का कभी मॉलिक्यूल नहीं लगा सकते. Okay, it would be simply sodium chloride. As we know, sodium chloride is an ionic compound, so force of attraction between positive, we can write positive and negative ions. As we know that, sodium chloride in NaCl, Na is positive, Cl negative, so it's the force between the positive and negative ions. I think that was the last question. Yes, that was the last question. And finally we completed another past paper which was from October November 2020, 41
We will be completing many more, and please sure subscribe and share the video to your students and colleagues. And yes, that's it. Bye.